Most people keep hearing the government will make driving licenses cheaper in 2026. So they pause, they wait, and sometimes they waste months. Here's the problem. The government has real proposals, but most of it is not law yet, and prices won't magically drop on one date. Today, I will show you the plan, what is realistic, what is controversial, and the real timeline. I am using official document and serious reporting, and I'll keep it simple. If you stay until the end, you will get a short checklist. Wait or start now. Germany's transport ministry says the average cost for a car driving license is around 3,400, and it has become too expensive for many people. Patrick Schneider, on behalf of the ministry, presented a reform package whereby the ministry says legal laws can be initiated in the early half of 2026, and the law could be in full force around the early part of 2027. The ministry's first proposal was to make theory learning more flexible and digital. They want driving schools to have more freedom in how they want driving schools to have more freedom in how theory is delivered, including digital options. Their reason was that you don't need a classroom for every theory unit, which could reduce overhead costs, but it all depends on how driving schools price it. The ministry also proposed more simulator use. One big detail many people miss is that the ministry says manual shifting competence could be learned fully on a simulator, and that could reduce the need for driving schools to keep extra manual vehicles. And they also said exams could also be taken in an automatic vehicle. But the reality check is that a simulator helps, but it's not the same as real traffic. Therefore, the rule design should be taken into proper consideration. The ministry's third proposal was to reduce mandatory special drives like night drive, highway, or rural or overland drives, and channel some of these drives to simulators. Their reason was that these special mandatory drives are expensive because their driver is time and car time, and that channeling some of these drives to a simulator drive could reduce cost drastically. But the question that people ask is which of these drives could be simulated and which of them could be taken manually? And another question or another issue that I also have is that although some of these special mandatory drives are required, I know especially some driving schools are not practicing them. For instance, during my time, I was asked to pay a tip so that I escape the night drive, which was illegal. But what I also noticed was that they channeled all the night drive into a day drive so that they make money. So even if the ministry is proposing that driving schools, especially those schools that do not keep records of all the transactions they do with their students, will find a backdoor to channel some of these mandatory drives, even if it's on a simulator, let's say some day drives, so that they make extra money. Therefore, I think that the ministry should pay keen attention to this to make sure that it is well executed. Their fourth proposal is reducing the driving time in the practical test. So they propose that they will reduce the driving time in the practical test to the EU minimum, which is 25 minutes. The TÜV criticizes this idea and warns against reducing evaluation time too much. My take is that this might save some money and reduce bottleneck, but evaluation time should be long enough to judge for real competence. Also, another view of mine is that to pass the final driving exams sometimes also depend on your instructor. For instance, if your instructor wants you to take more lessons or is not satisfied with the amount of money he or she has milked from you, he might see some loophole or some shortcoming in your driving ability, but will not correct you and will wait until the D-Day, the judgment day, for the examiner to find out. A typical example in my case, whereby I was driving without setting the inner mirror properly. I took so many lessons, in fact, numerous lessons, and this instructor never told me about my darken and setting inner mirror. Anytime I set the inner mirror, he looked at me and never corrected me until the very day of the exams, whereby I set the inner mirror, started the vehicle. And on the way, the examiner behind the car in the back seat saw that the angle and the positioning of my body and the positioning of the inner mirror was not in the right place, thereby asked me to park the car. This coupled with merging a V road whereby I got a bit closer to the car in front of me instead of leaving a specific amount of distance. So these two mistakes caused the examiner, or these two mistakes make the examiner ask me to park the car somewhere. And then in German, he told me, Prüfung vorbei, which means the exams is ended. Therefore, I did not pass that exams on the first practical test. I had to do it again, changing the instructor, and on the second round, I passed it. The fifth proposal, which is not so exciting, but it is very important. This proposal is reducing bureaucracy, cost time and money. They propose reducing documentation and paperwork. They also propose that they will simplify and digitalize instructor training and enhance continuous training by the instructors. The sixth proposal, which is my favorite proposal, is on price and pass rate transparency. They propose that there will be an online view to compare driving school cost and failure rate. In this particular dispensation, there is no clear view of pricing from different driving schools. One might pick a driving school with an unclear pricing, and by the time one realizes, the price or the cost will rise. Therefore, if they ensure robust transparency, it will force driving schools to compete on pricing and quality. This is the timeline the ministry itself describes. In 2026, they will work with the state, develop measures, and start taking steps. In early 2027, there's a likelihood that the law will be in force and price changes will happen gradually. From several reportings, the minister said it is not worth waiting because this is not a single moment where a price tag appears, and that if you need a license for work or life, it might cost you more in lost time. Here are some moves I have for you in your quest to get a driving license. Get quotes from 3 driving schools and ask for a written price list. Plan your learning so you don't fail tests repeatedly, because failures are a cost multiplier. And then also, if you find yourself in bigger cities like Hamburg or near Tübingen, you can find out if it is possible to get your license in a smaller city, because in smaller cities, the likelihood of failure are lower than in bigger cities. And then also, get a driving school that make payment transparent. For instance, pay through banks and not on the counter, because there are so many driving schools that take money in their offices, and sometimes they refuse to give you receipt for your payment and later on request for more money because you cannot prove that you paid. And then also giving the money to them in cash enable them to fraud the government. But in cash, they will be able to hide some of their transactions from the government, thereby paying lesser tax. So enroll in schools that allow you to pay your money or your driving hours through bank. And then also a third one is that if you are waiting for reform, set a personal deadline. Either start now or reassess after official decisions in 2026. If you want, comment your city, your situation, or whether you want manual or automatic. I will tell you where you are likely to cost. I'll tell you where you are likely to spend more money and how to avoid unnecessary spending. Subscribe to Travel Abroad Reality, and let's keep the fire burning together.